Hello and welcome to Learning by Leading, a podcast for and by feminist youth leaders. We are a group of powerful individuals who share a passion for tackling social injustice and have come together to strengthen the feminist movement.
Let's start with some key questions this podcast will try to address. What does feminism mean? Who is a feminist youth leader? Why should young people care about feminist leadership? Over the next 5 episodes, we'll try to unpack feminist youth leadership in one conversation at a time.
To me, a feminist youth leader leads by listening, respecting people's lived experiences, and advocating for social reform. Most of all, a feminist youth leader is open to learning and unlearning.
So, what does a feminist leader look like? Join us as we share our journeys and stories of learning by leading to discuss what makes a good leader and why we need feminist leadership to make the world a better place.
My name is Adrija, and I am a psychologist and mental health activist. I am joined by my friend Munazah, a fellow advocate for mental health and inclusion. Hi, Munazah.
Hi Adrija. The theme for our first episode is neurodivergence and mental health. I know that you're deeply interested in these two topics professionally, but I also understand that this is personal for you as well. You live with chronic mental illnesses and you're also mother of a neurodivergent child. What are some of the challenges you face in coping and caregiving?
Being a single parent is hard enough, but these particular challenges make it more isolating. I often find myself in situations where I'm navigating between the emotional reactions of my son and other adults simultaneously. For example, I live with my mother, and growing up, I have always seen her stressed out. Even though she has the same educational qualifications and job as my father, she also had the largest share of the responsibilities at home with raising the kids. As a result, she was always under a lot of pressure. Now, her father had similar struggles and a short temper. So she picked that up and was typically an angry parent. I grew up seeing that. So my default is also being aggressive and authoritative. But parenting for me usually involves becoming vigilant of my intergenerational trauma, stopping the cycle, regulating my emotions so that more often than not, I discipline my child with compassion and nonviolence. I have to be very observant and careful of maintaining my own mental health in order to do that successfully. And being neurodivergent, my son has unique challenges, and we live in a system that doesn't make a lot of space for it. He's exceptionally good in some areas like intelligence and creativity, but he struggles with social interactions. He struggles with uncertainty and overstimulating environments. So, caregiving for me also involves helping him develop tools for adjustment and speaking up for him in the world that should ideally give him a fair chance. Honestly, it can be very exhausting to do all that, especially when not enough people know about neurodivergence and trauma. Munaza, I know you too have faced similar isolation in your academic spaces due to ignorance about mental health. How do you deal with it?
When I remember 5 years of my college degree, one of the most dominating experience was my mental health. I came to be known as that person with mental health issues. Initially, it was anxiety, depression. Later, I realized that it was ADHD. I got diagnosed. I started medication, but I was also infamous for being that person whose mental health issues never ended. From my first year of architecture to fifth year of architecture. I think one of the most important points when you are neurodivergent especially when you have disabilities like ADHD or autism, is that it's not very, the understanding of these things are not very commonplace. You do not know what it is. For me, almost for 3 years of my college degree, I did not know what I was going through. So the burden was on me because I used to go to doctors, I used to take medicines, but my mental health situation would not get better. The next struggle was to actually get a diagnosis and to, have an official diagnosis that could be shown in my college that would become one step in asking for valid and justifiable considerations because I was not doing well in college as well. One of the things that happen when you have ADHD, especially when it's not diagnosed and it's the knowledge of which is not commonplace, is that it fills you with a lot of depression also. I think I've been depressed as long as I can remember, especially if I go back to my college years. Another experience was, which I would say was very painful, was the lack of support and also lack of empathy for you. What is generally expected in colleges or academic institutions if is that if we give you consideration this time, you should be better the next time. But that was not something that was happening to me because I was constantly sick and I was very consistent with my illness, with my disability, with my neurodivergence, I would say. And I still am very consistent with that. So there's this thing that happens, which I would like to call survival of the fittest. I remember talking to my teachers, and I would even cry, and they would tell me, you know what, just go and wash your face. Just go wash your face, and then come, stop crying, and then we'll listen to you. That was how it went. And again, all through this experience, I had no idea if I was actually not at fault or it was something that was my fault. And one of the event was that I was in a classroom full of students, and when my teacher told me, "What is it that you have that we should consider your case?" And in my mind, I was like, "There's a lot I have to say, but also there's no way I could put that experience into words." I only cried, and everybody in my class was looking at me.
Amongst all these obstacles, how did you learn to be resilient and speak up for yourself?
So, fast forward to my fifth year after I graduated, I think looking back, what changed first was actually getting to know about what it was that I was going through. It had a name. Uh, it was well researched. You were supposed to get help for it. It was you were supposed to get medicines for it. It was ADHD. Another thing that helped me was just going on the internet and listening or reading the experiences of people who also had ADHD. I think that was one way in which I felt at peace, where I did not feel alone, isolated, and othered. When I realized that I'm not alone in this, there are many more people who go through the same thing. And currently, one of the main things that really still helps me are the memes around it and how people can take something that must have been a source of pain for them and just humor it. And by humoring it, we are normalizing it also.
I can definitely relate to what you're saying about the internet helping you because watching this show called Atypical, it really helped me. It really helped my son and I understand autism better, as well as how it connects with parenting and family dynamics.
So, Adrija, what kind of big and small systematic changes would make life easier for you and your son?
Hmm. Well, one thing that would make a huge difference is if, people were just more informed about how nervous systems work, especially in the context of meltdowns. My son has been, he's been labeled disruptive and defiant and disobedient because of how he behaves during a meltdown. And, he's not even 6 years old yet, kicked out of kindergarten twice because of this. But usually he's not doing any of it deliberately. I think society has this
Yeah.
impression that if a child is behaving in an inconvenient way, then वो जानबूझ के कर रहे हैं. They're doing it on purpose or to bother others. In reality, what happens is that there is something deeper happening. For instance, with my son, sometimes something happens that triggers him emotionally. Let's say he sees other kids with their fathers. He has that insecurity that he doesn't have a father figure in his life, or he's made a mistake. He's very insecure about being different. So when he makes a mistake, like he makes an error in writing, or he doesn't know how to do something but he sees other people doing them, these are his insecurities. So when they get triggered, um how he deals with those big feelings is to get some sort of control. That at that moment, having a sense of control becomes a priority for him. He needs things to be in a particular order and predictable. And I think that happens to all humans. When we feel big emotions, we grasp onto our surroundings for a sense of control. But unfortunately, we can't control most things. And when that happens, my son's sensitivity to sensory stimulation and whatever is happening around him increases drastically. Like normally, a simple touch would not, a touch of a hand would not affect him that much. But when he's that emotional and he needs that sense of control, and then reality hits and he doesn't have control, in that moment when a child accidentally or unwittingly touches him, that simple touch becomes this huge thing for him. And even that small touch, or let's say a loud sound, leads to a full blown meltdown with him screaming, hitting, kicking, breaking things, etc. And that's exactly what the school or the authorities focus on, that he's doing this unwanted behavior. They don't put in the effort to see how so many things led up to it. I really wish that people knew how to identify the stages. It never starts with the disruptive behavior. There are always smaller things that lead up to it. If his teachers could just, be trained in identifying those stages and showing him how to regulate his emotions, um, and intervene in some of those previous stages, then the meltdowns would never happen.
That is so true. Simply spreading awareness can make such a big difference to people's outlook.
Absolutely. I think something similar was the motivation behind your advocacy, right?
Yes. Again, the awareness did not start from me telling people about it, but actually getting to know about it myself. With neurodivergence and with the current state of mental health awareness that is there, people did not know what neurodivergence are. People did not know what invisible disabilities are or whether they have them. And I think what was completely a game changer was getting to know what I have is a common mental health disorder and a disability. When I was going through it, there was a lot of guilt and there was a lot of shame. And when awareness came to me, that guilt, that shame converted to empathy for my own self and acceptance. And after that, there was anger and there was rage towards the way people like us are treated. And I think it was after this anger, after this rage, that decided that, I cannot stay silent anymore. There has to be, I need to do something, even if it's just speaking up for myself. And for me, my advocacy started small. It started by speaking up for myself, and that too in colleges. And it started with small things like asking for extending deadlines, asking for relaxation in marking, asking for change in behavior, asking for, change in supervisor, uh, and asking for safe spaces. So these are the things that it's started from. And I think uh, it was interesting because I would never have thought that I could be given provisions based on my mental health issues or my disabilities or your neurodivergence. But there was anger and there was disappointed based on the fact that we are constantly marginalized. We are further marginalized based on something that is not in our control. But also, the fact is that the system could change to accommodate us. And there was real ignorance about the fact that systems could change, and you can also fight for changing of systems. I think it was during my fifth year when I went through this realization, when I was struggling, when I was suffering, when I was bullied, when I was humiliated by my teachers. And when, despite everything, I managed to pass, I came across an opportunity. I came across change.org, where you can start petitions about issues that you believe need to be amplified and need to be talked about more. And that is how I started a petition myself, where I demanded better mental health facilities in colleges and universities, but especially in my own university, Jamia Millia Islamia. My demands were simple. It was about having an SOP in college where students with mental health issues, students with disabilities, and students who have mental health emergency or who are suicidal, there should be an SOP in place for them, for the staff to better navigate the situation. The second demand was having an active counseling cell in colleges. When I was in college, I did not know I could get counseled by somebody in college. And after I got to know about it, I went to this place and there was no one. And then I went to the website to see what the college counseling cell are doing. And their last event was in 2014 when I was still in 10th standard. And yes, so another demand was that there should be more active counseling cell. And the third demand was the sensitization of teachers, a mandatory sensitization of teachers, where teachers must know how to behave, uh, not in instances of emergency, but in general, how to be sensitive around students who are going through mental health issues, who might be suicidal, who are disabled, and also how to act in situation where there is a mental health emergency. So these were the three demands of my petition. And what was also interesting for me when I was researching this petition was how these demands aren't something radical. They are there in different policies, be it for mental health, be it in Mental Health Care Act or National Suicide Prevention Policy. And I think that was another thing that facilitated my own ambition to work for mental health advocacy.
Wow, I love how your journey is so similar to mine, even though we have completely different stories. Um, so, as feminist leaders, part of what we do is use our personal experiences as motivation to fight for social reform. A large portion of my work involves knowledge sharing as well, so that more people can be trauma informed and aware about how nervous systems work. Similarly, in your advocacy work, you too understand the importance and need of spreading awareness and making systemic changes to accommodate a variety of needs. Like you said, it's not something radical. It doesn't have to be radical. It's just basic needs that are different from other
Yes.
people's needs. That's the only difference. It's it's a variety.
Yes.
After a short break, we will hear from our teammate Soumya, another feminist youth leader, speaking up for neurodivergence and mental health.
Soumya is a neuroqueer development sector professional who's primarily interested in leveraging digital mediums to amplify marginalized voices, bridging existing gaps, and promote inclusivity and accessibility. In the last year, they launched their own podcast, Atypical Dikkate, addressing disability, neurodivergent, and queerness. Welcome, Soumya.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Soumya, can you tell us more about how feminist leadership relates to neurodivergence and mental health in your perspective?
I'll start from here that there is invisibilization of this community, people who are living with different kinds of neurodivergent conditions or psychosocial disabilities or mental health issues. Even in the feminist spaces, um, most of them are led by able-bodied, Savarna, uh, cishet women, and so there is the community is missing because most of the leaders are also not from these spaces. The challenges that we face are often sidelined or not heard about, and also because it's a structural issue, right? The neuronormativity, the idea, the concept that there is one correct way of being, thinking, and being present in the world. So, there's an entire community is basically missing. So, when this is missing, and we talk about feminist leadership, there's a bit of dissonance because intersectionality also means making space for varied experiences, people from different backgrounds. But when there is this idea that there's one correct way of being, even within feminist spaces, um, I feel a little uncomfortable, a lot uncomfortable with the idea of feminist leadership because I don't see these voices often. And even when disability is talked about, what we need to remember is that it's not a monolithic concept. There are different lived experiences and ways in which we navigate as well as cope to survive, which needs to be made space for without judgment and assumptions. Because from the outside, you have not lived it, right? So I'll give you a very small example. When we talk about social justice, a lot of discourse goes on, but I still see some people very casually using the word like, "Are you blind?" And these are like well known people who are very passionate about social justice. But like, can we pause a bit before we use something like this? Language plays a huge role, it marginalizes us. People are even scared to say the word disabled, like stuff like specially able, differently able, divyang, all these words are used. But what happens is that this way, we are otherized. The challenges that we face, they are not addressed. Rather, the way language is used, it otherizes us. Oh, this person has special needs. No, we have human needs. And there's a long way to go before people feel receptive towards understanding that. And another challenge is that when we talk about the community, the feminist community, the disability community also comes in under that to some extent. But what we don't make enough space for is that not everybody's medical diagnoses are same. Not everybody's realities, trauma, and the violence those bodies have experienced are same. They are very different. And why do we have to compare them to create hierarchies? To say that, okay, I am more oppressed, you are less oppressed. Is that the idea of feminist leadership that we are trying to build? So these are some thoughts and questions that I sit with because of personal experiences I've had in the moment. How can we empathize with each other without trying to create hierarchies?
What are some of the gaps that you recognize in systems that fail to address the needs of people living with mental illnesses and neurodivergence?
To answer this, I want to touch upon a few points, but I'll start with the healthcare system. So, I live with uh, different neurological conditions, psychosocial disability, and so broadly, I identify as neurodivergent, right? So, when it comes to medical care, a lot of sensitization needs to happen. There's a gap in research when it comes to neurodivergent conditions, and a lot of pathologization happens. Matlab, the trauma that we experience, which leads to distress, is often individualized and the burden is put on one person. Sure, some of them are neurological conditions, but these are exacerbated because of the barriers that we face in the society, just like the social model of disability states that, right? So not enough sensitization has happened within the medical space. Not all therapists understand what is autism, what is OCD, and the challenges that come with, or like what are seizures that someone experiences, what are the different kinds of seizures. So not enough understanding is there, and how to support them, because through those experiences, it's lacking in that, and not enough empathy is there. I was talking to one of my queer and neurodivergent friends a couple of months back, and they were sharing, like, there's no time for mental health professionals also, because, or like even like the healthcare system, because there are so many, for the lack of a better word, patients, humans, and there's not enough time to humanely treat a person, listen to them, validate them. So that is one part that is there. Next, I would like to touch upon the community space. There's this, I don't know, don't want to say it is a norm, but there is this idea that's prevalent that you need to disclose your identities, the oppression that you face, or your diagnosis, to be heard, the trauma to be accepted, and to be accepted in the community space. And sometimes people are forced to come out, because coming out, be it whatever condition you live with, especially to which some kind of stigma is attached, it comes with consequences. And being forced to say that, okay, these are the conditions that I live with, violates my agency and autonomy. Why can't I be respected without having to disclose that this is the oppression that I face? Isn't that what community space is supposed to be like, to support us when when we are having a tough time? So that is one part that I would like to highlight. And the third part is a little bit different, because I genuinely experienced it. Like, it was a sensory nightmare for me, in the last couple of weeks, because of the heat wave and how it affected me as an autistic person, because I already deal with sensory overload and sensory issues. Um, and on top of that, he induced migraines, and being autistic and a person who is menstruating, the body is going through a havoc is being wreaked, that nobody talks about the intersection of climate justice and disability. There are a lot of gaps when it comes to these topics, and we can start somewhere and start having conversations to spread a little more awareness. But I think even that is just the bare minimum right now.
I could definitely relate to a lot of what you said. So thank you for that powerful answer. My final question to you, Soumya, is what is one message that you want to give to fellow feminist youth leaders when it comes to neurodivergence and mental health?
A lot of words and jargon are thrown around in the spaces, even within the feminist spaces. But something which is left behind is building solidarity and collectivizing together for solutions. That's the work that gets left behind amidst all of this. And before having all these assumptions and biases, because it's invisible, right? This the nature of psychosocial disability, mental illness, trauma, neurodivergence. It's invisible. So I understand why some might make assumptions, but we need to remind ourselves that ableism is a structural issue. It's not an individually created issue, it's a structural issue. Yes, of course, many people uphold it, yes, but it's it's a structural issue which is there everywhere. And how we survive in this new liberal capitalist world, which is also ableist, is you know um you can't punish how disabled people function in this. Like, I understand some people might want to approach it in a different way, but for me, I need to keep up. I need to keep up because it has taken a lot to reach here. And I need to keep up because, or else I'll crash. I know it's not a healthy way, but we also need to talk about the different ways in which disabled bodies exist in this world. So my way of also not having a breakdown, a crash, is keeping myself occupied. But that doesn't mean that I'm adhering to neurotypical standards, or like you can't paint it in one size fits all brush color. So that is my biggest message. Like, can we make space for all kinds of lived experiences without subjecting them to bias and our assumptions of what they might be going through? um, if we truly want to build an intersectional and empathetic um feminist space, a lot of care has to be given. And the care aspect is the responsibility of everyone, not just one or two people. Even the facilitator comes with trauma. Can we hold them with care as well? It's important to think about ourselves, yes, but let's not make self care an individual concept. Rather, think about care as a community concept.
Absolutely, yes. I completely agree with you. Care is the responsibility for everybody. Um, so thank you, Soumya, for sharing your insights and your inputs. They really help put together everything that we've been talking about today. Thank you for joining us, Soumya.
Thank you.
A lot of what you said, Munazah, and a lot of what Soumya said, it felt like all we are asking for is um, just some basic considerations. And it's not like we have to change the world or make it totally inconvenient for others. We just want people to sort of understand how it's very difficult to fit into typical standards when in reality we are so much more. I mean, uh, be it my chronic mental illness or my son's neurodivergence or your experience with a neurodivergence and mental illness or everything that Soumya was talking about. We are also human, right? We're also part of this world. But like you said in the beginning, there is this constant otherization because we don't fit into a typical box. And I feel like
Mm.
unless more conversations like this happen and more work like the things we do happen, unless that movement carries forward, we'll constantly be feeling inadequate just because we're different.
I'm really happy that I got to talk to you, Adrija, and you, Soumya. And it's really great to see how this community is taking charge and we are asking for these considerations. We're asking for visibility and we're asking for respect and dignity as well by asking for simple things. And that was our episode on neurodivergence and mental health. We'll be back soon with different ideas and different voices. Follow and subscribe to stay updated.